I first met Erin because I joined her home church, and actually her and her husband Sherwin led that home church with Carmen Bookman. So that's when I first started exploring the meeting house in 2017, and it's great to have you here, Erin. I'll hand it over to you.
You just pray for a minute. Father, this was not my idea, so speak through me. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm really an introvert, so this is not a forte. I'm Erin, my husband Sherwin is up there, my daughter Maya, my son Kai are there as well. Kai in the car was like, Mommy, what happens if you start crying? Is there someone going to yell, next? So you can do that. I'm trying to hold it together. But anyway, last Sunday, Jordan said he was looking for one more person to speak, and I wondered who that would be too. And on Monday, I went for a run, and I just felt like God was saying, like, you need to share something. And I said no, and then I said thank you, no thank you, because it's Jesus, and I felt like that was more polite. And on Tuesday, it happened again, and here we are on Wednesday. I reached out to Jordan, and I said, I think I have something to share. I'm not really part of your Burlington community yet. Sherwin and I have been coming for a few weeks, but we've been a member of the Oakville Meeting House since 2008. And we moved further west, and Jordan and Kelty, we met through home church, and they came here, so we felt like it was kind of the natural next step for us. Over the past few weeks as we've been emerging from COVID, kind of thinking about where we return to. So the prompt from Jordan was how God showed himself to me through a time of suffering. And I have a couple of things with me that I wanted to share with you. But I remember, I think it was May of 2018, I was sitting on our porch outside our house. We had just bought our first home. We'd gone through a real period of transition and changes. And I felt like we could finally take a deep breath and exhale and feel like kind of we hit some semblance of whatever normal looks like. But I did feel in the back of my mind that something was coming, and as I was preparing yesterday to talk, I found this journal entry that I wanted to read. Jordan doesn't have to stand up here, so I'll just improvise. That wasn't a criticism. Okay, so I wrote this on May 14th, 2018, several days before life as we knew it kind of just started to drastically change. And it was a prayer that I wrote out, and it was a question that I felt God prompting me saying, and it said, do you trust me to orchestrate your life events as I choose? And I wrote this out to Jesus. I said, I dreamt we were talking about this. My fear is that if I fully trust you, horrible things will happen to teach me how to trust. I feel like I know this is illogical, but I'm afraid, and I still feel this. And I said, you are a mighty God, and today I will try to continually trust you. And I wrote out Psalm 91, which became integral to me over the next few years. Just 1 second, bear with me, everybody. I'm just going to look really great on film. Okay. A few days later, it just kind of felt like domino after domino after domino started falling, and it kind of culminated, felt like it didn't stop from May of 2018 until September 2019 when my mom was diagnosed with terminal bone cancer. She was given 9 months to live. That began a period of time from September until June that I flew to PEI where she lived and cared for her along with my sister. And it seemed like every other weekend I was jumping on a plane or trying to figure out if I had to jump on a plane. And if you've ever watched anyone suffer from cancer, it's a terrible way to watch someone die. But my mom, she lived a life of tremendous faith. That's why I'm a Christian today. She faced suffering continually through different situations throughout her whole life, but until the end, her faith and her hope never wavered. She wrote a journal when she was admitted to palliative care, and one of her entries I just wanted to share with you because it illustrates what hope looks like in the midst of intense suffering. So, January 16th, 2020, she wrote the lyrics to a song by Mercy Me. It said, even if you don't. So it said, I know you're able, and I know you save through the fire with your mighty hand, but even if you don't, my hope is you alone. I know the sorrow and I know the hurt would all go away if you just say the word, but even if you don't, my hope is you alone. And then she wrote, Jesus promises us that he is able to take away all of this pain and hurt, but even if he doesn't, we can still trust in him because he is faithful. Our family is under such assault over the past 10 to 15 years, and through it all, we have remained in Jesus. It says, to those much is given, then much is expected. We have been given so much, and now we need to show the world how faithful God has been to us. We must give no less in return. I love you, Mom. I think what she didn't realize by writing all those journals was how much of a legacy it would leave for me, and I couldn't read them for a really long time. I've actually just started reading them recently, but the takeaways from that horrific time, now that I'm a few years, almost 2 years removed, is that how I live matters, and how I live through suffering matters. It matters to me, but it matters to my kids and their kids and the generations that come after us. I also just wanted to share with you Psalm 91 before I stop talking, and that was a passage that I had written that day sitting on my front porch and that I've returned to over and over and over again. That's better. Now people can't see my hand shaking. Okay. So Psalm 91 says, whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. They say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. It goes on. I won't read the whole thing, but that was a passage that God has continued to use in my life to say that suffering is part of life. You know, we all want to avoid it, but unfortunately the world we live in is broken. But when it comes, when we're on the other side of whatever it is we've gone through, I think we can all agree that the things that it teaches us are much deeper than what happens when life is just stable or great or normal. So that's all I have.
Part of the community and you can't ever leave. So I'm glad you guys have been checking us out. We're actually going over to their house of fish and chips tonight, so we'll further convince them to join us. Thank you, Erin. Thank you for sharing. I know it's not always comfortable sharing personal stories in a community that you're new to as well. But if you keep running, then God will keep speaking to you, and you'll have to maybe speak again. So next up we have Art Tillerson, so I'll just invite Art down to speak. So I got to know Art a little bit through January and February, because in Advance Road, Art and Amy and their 3 kids were there, so it's great getting to get to know them a little bit more. And Art has something special that he wants to share from recent times. So Art.
Hi, good morning. My name is Art, as you know, and I'm here with my wife Amy and our 3 children, Seamus, Kieran, and Ronan. And of course, we call the Burlington Meeting House our spiritual home. I would like to thank Jordan for encouraging me to share a testimony. I know with absolute certainty the Lord helped me and granted my prayers during my mother's illness. The Lord strengthened and supported me and my family during a very challenging time and spoke to me in ways that I can only understand now that my mom is in heaven. I was with my mom when she was first diagnosed with terminal leukemia. It was a very upsetting conversation from my perspective. When the doctor spoke to us, I was surprised, though, by the calmness with which my mom took the news. After the doctor left the hospital room and it was just me and my mom, she told me that she is fine and that everything will be fine. At that time, I could not understand at all how she could be fine, especially when I was anything but fine. And actually, she was very, very unwell. But my mom knew she was going to go to heaven, and that was her focus. Later that day, I went back to my home. I was so worried about handling the situation so that it would not be too upsetting for my children, of course, who are very close with their grandmother. I really had no idea what I was going to say at the time. I tried to prepare something that was somewhere between an honest answer and a complete omission of the truth. My son Seamus could see I was upset, and before I could speak, because I really didn't have composure, he asked me, he said, is Nana in heaven yet? I said without thinking, not yet, but hopefully soon. I believe that one conversation helped me through the very painful cancer odyssey to properly frame my perspective and my understanding. My mom also had that clear focus on heaven through her whole experience. Later, and of course, I was with my mom a lot, and I tried to help her through this as much as I could. My mom asked repeatedly that I be with her when she passed. She said she needed me. And I thought, in the back of my mind, I thought that's really kind of unusual, because my mom, for anybody who knows my mom, she's a very, very strong-willed person, and she's very deep in faith, and I questioned, why does she need me so badly? And, of course, every time I promised that I would be there, and then, of course, I would ask God, dear God, please help me be there for her. And each time I felt ashamed and saddened that I promised something to my mother I did not believe I could do. Like, I work full time, I have 3 children and a wife, I live 20 minutes from my parents' house, and I work 40 minutes from my parents' house, and that is an extremely good traffic. It can be hours, as we all know. And at that exact same time, we were planning on moving homes, which we did at approximately the same time as my mom's passing. As we all know, it is also extremely difficult to predict with any accuracy when my mom was going to pass. Our oncologist team, the nurse practitioners, the wonderful people at Hematology Oncology, they could not give any reasonable answer. But of course, God knew. The day my mom passed, I was very, very tired. I had been with her most of the previous few nights and most of the days. I told the PSW and the nurse to let me know if my mom was going to pass, because I needed to be with her. And I said that day, that I needed to be with her. I then went to bed to rest. Shortly after I laid down, the Lord woke me and from a very deep sleep, and I knew my mom was going to pass. I knew the Lord called me to her bedside. And actually, for the first time, had me read verses from the Bible to my mom. My mom was normally the instructional leader there, of course. I'm embarrassed to say that I did not have a Bible with me at that time, but the Lord immediately guided me to a website on my phone, and it had the most beautiful end-of-life verses to provide comfort. It was short. There were only 7 or so verses, then the Lord's Prayer. At most 10 minutes. The verses were perfect, beautiful. I held my mom's right hand while my dad held my mom's left hand. And when I started the Lord's Prayer, I felt my mom let go of my hand, and I knew she had passed on to heaven. God's timing is perfect. God let me know that my mom is loved by him, and that God loves me. God let me know that my mom was safe in heaven, and that I would see her again when it was my time to go to heaven. My mom passed on December 22nd, 2021. My mom was my best friend. I spoke to her twice daily, as involved on my drive to work in the morning, then on the way home after work. She always had my back, and I always had her back. I know with absolute certainty that the Lord our God had both our backs. God is there for each of us when we need him most. My mom and our Lord knew I needed to be with my mom and my dad that day. It wasn't the other way around. So I would be able to understand and find peace and to let go, and to know that I, once again, will see her in heaven when it is my time. Thank you very much for listening, and may God bless all of us.
For sharing that with us. Our last person to speak this morning before I share is Kevin Visser, so I'll invite Kevin to come down. A number of you probably know Kevin, even though he's quite introverted. I mean, I'm still getting to know him, so maybe I've got that wrong. But no, Kevin is the life of the party, and has given so much to many of us, even if we've only known him for a short time. And Kevin shared with us, well, I wasn't technically here, but I say us, because I'm a part of you now. He shared with us last Easter season with his story, and I invited him again to share a continuing journey of how is God at work in a season of challenge and suffering. So Kevin.
Thank you, Jordan. I'm Kevin Visser. Good morning, everybody. I've been attending the meeting house for over 20 years. As a matter of fact, I'm with my beautiful wife here, and our 20th anniversary is this year, so it's been well over 20 years. We've been at the meeting at the Burlington site since the very beginning. I'm also here with my beautiful sons, Keo and Park. So thanks, guys. I did have the honor of speaking last year as well. I don't think Jordan realized that when he invited me, but he kept the invite open, so I appreciate that. A lot has changed since then, and it's great to be able to share again. So thank you for having me. Thank you for coming today. I brought my Kleenex. I'm prepared. I already started tearing up when I was speaking. I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in June 2020. It had started in my esophagus, spread to my lungs, brain, liver, lymph nodes, adrenal glands. The prognosis was not good. The average life expectancy of someone in my position was 9 to 12 months. The immediate outpouring of love from this community and others was overwhelming. It was incredibly uplifting, and it was encouraging to me and my family. Also, the first type of chemo that I went on worked exceptionally well and shrunk the tumors considerably. Last year when I shared, I was and I'm still very moved by 1 Corinthians 13, verse 13, as I felt I was living it in real time. And now these 3 remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. We felt surrounded by love. Last summer was amazing. We were able to accept many cottage invites and made many memories with friends and family. Lisa and I were able to go to Vancouver in the fall for a few amazing days as well. The last few months have been tougher, as the second type of chemo we tried did not work as well as the first one did. Then in December I was accepted into a clinical trial that gave us a lot of hope, but then just a couple weeks ago I was told that I would have to leave the trial and that the treatment was also not working. All my tumors had grown and the cancer had shown up in some new areas as well. Since then I've started a third type of chemo, had radiation on a new tumor on my spine, and started the process to have radiation on a new brain tumor as well. As we work through the treatment options, unfortunately the prognosis becomes more bleak, and it's been more and more difficult on me and my family. One thing I do know is that I do not need to fear death, and that I will be spending eternity in paradise with God, surrounded by His limitless love, and that we will all be reunited there. This is the one thing that gives me peace during this time. We have hope through our faith in Jesus and what He did for us today on Good Friday. For all of us who believe, our kingdom awaits. However, I still want to be here with my family as long as possible, and I know that's what they want to. In recent weeks, through conversation with Jordan and with others, I've been reminded of God's healing power and have been reinvigorated in my faith and my hope for the future. I believe in miracles. I believe that God can heal me in spite of what the doctors say. Just this week, a friend shared this verse with me. Psalm 77, verse 14. You are the God who performs miracles. You display your power among the peoples. It says that he performs miracles. It doesn't say performed. He can heal me now. This is the hope of my family. This is my hope. And this is what we are praying for now. We greatly appreciate and need your support as well, and especially your prayers. Thank you, and God bless you all.
We're going to pray for Kevin in a moment. God is a God who performed the story of the woman with the issue of blood, and the doctors couldn't fix her situation. And there were crowds around Jesus, bumping into Jesus, and no miracles were being performed with all these people that were banging into the life, God himself in the flesh. But this woman, in desperation, pushing through the crowd, knowing that nothing natural may be able to save her, but there's one that can, and reach forward with faith, added her works, pushing through the crowd. She shouldn't even be touching someone like him, having the issue that she had, and touching him. She stopped him in his tracks. Power left him, and she was healed. And Jesus turned around and said, who has touched me? And the disciples were like, everyone's touching you. We can be banging up against Jesus. We can be even praying to Jesus and not receiving the healing he has for us. Sometimes it takes that desperation to reach out. And other times, the person that has the issue may not have the strength, may not have the faith. And you may have heard of another story of when friends took their friend on a mat and they went to see Jesus, but the place was packed, so they climbed on the roof. And they probably offended the people that were in there because they dug a big hole in their roof. I'm sure we would all love if someone that we didn't know came and dug a hole in our roof when we were having a party. They dug a hole in the roof and they lifted, they put their friend down the mat in front of Jesus. And Jesus said, because of their faith, your sins are forgiven. Pick up your mat and walk. Jesus can heal. And sometimes he uses our own faith. Sometimes he uses the faith of the community around us. Sometimes, despite of us, he breaks in. And sometimes he doesn't. And we don't know why. But we know as Christians that without faith, it is impossible to please God. But we who come to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him, who push through that crowd, who dig through that roof, who have faith that add works and inconvenience and potentially offending people to put their friend in front of Jesus, to get just the hem of his garment, to touch the person that needs it. So we're going to pray. So I know we're all standing with Kevin, but I'd like us to stand in this moment. And if you're able, obviously, you don't have to. And I'm just going to pray for Kevin. If you feel comfortable, feel free to extend your hand as a sign of solidarity as well, but you don't have to. God, thank you for Kevin. Thank you that right now in this moment you are here. And we don't want to just rub shoulders against you. We want to grab a hold of the hem of your garment and receive your power. And you said, just before you left, important words, you said, Jesus, you said, these signs will accompany those who believe. They will lay hands on the sick, and they will recover. So we stand in what you have spoken. As I lay my hand on Kevin, his hands are outstretched towards him. We just command his body to be healed. You said, if you have faith the size of just a mustard seed, you can speak to this mountain, and it will move, and it will be cast into the sea. Humans can't move mountains, but God, you can through us if we just have a little bit of faith. So I just speak to this mountain of cancer. And I say, I command you to leave his body, be thrown into the sea. And we just release healing over Kevin in agreement today, where 2 or more of you agree on earth about anything that you may ask. It shall be done for you by my Father who is in heaven. So we just agree together as his community, as his brothers and sisters, for complete healing in his body. I just declare this sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it. So God, we bring this to you today, and we will continue to contend in faith. But regardless of anything, we trust you. We trust you. You are good, and you are perfect. And we know that at the end of it all, we will be together in bliss for eternity, as Kevin shared today. We love you, God. Amen. Thanks, Kevin. Everyone can grab a seat. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. I know that's not easy to share, even for someone as extroverted as the Kevin Lisson. But we appreciate you sharing with us today and inviting us into that journey. I just wanted to share briefly for a few minutes here about Good Friday. We've heard some stories of immense challenge and suffering and death amongst people that we love. And through those times, these 3 people have been able to see God at work. They've been able to see God speaking and God leading and God's hand moving, and that's provided hope and strength. But not always do people recognize that God is at work amongst great evil and great challenge and great suffering. And being Good Friday, I think back to the disciples. I mean, Jesus actually told them plainly, like, I'm going to be handed over to the Pharisees, the chief priests, the religious leaders. I'm going to suffer. I will be killed, and I will rise again 3 days later. He actually said it plainly. He did speak a lot of parables, but there was a moment he spoke plainly to them. And actually, when he tried to explain what was going to happen, this immense challenge they were going to walk through, Peter actually took him aside. Some of you may know the story. And he rebuked Jesus and said, Jesus, I know you're God and stuff, but this shouldn't happen to you. This is not going to happen to you. Not on my watch, my paraphrase. I don't know if they had watches. Probably not. And then Jesus said some pretty strong words to Peter. He said, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are not setting your mind on God's interests, but man's. Those are some pretty intense words that Jesus spoke to Peter. And sometimes when Jesus is doing something in our lives, when Jesus is at work, sometimes we can try and resist him. Sometimes we can push back against challenges we face, darkness we face, thinking it's not of God. Now, I don't believe sickness is from God, and we've heard 3 stories of sickness today. I don't believe God has given people sickness to teach them lessons. I believe he uses everything in this life to bring good out of it. I believe he will work evil for good, but I don't believe he causes evil. And I believe sickness is evil. It will not be in the kingdom. And Peter, out of probably a loving heart, probably Peter thought this was quite a loving thing to do. You're the Messiah, you shouldn't really die. You should rescue us and deliver us from the Romans. And I love you and I want you to be around. I mean, that sounded pretty loving. I think probably maybe all the disciples would agree that's pretty loving, Peter. Maybe the whole world would agree that that was loving. But Jesus turned to him and said, get behind me, Satan. This is a stumbling block to me. So it's always a reminder for me that love is not always very clear what the loving thing to do is. Love is what Jesus is asking us to do. Love is always what God is saying to do, even if it may appear to be unloving. And in that moment, Jesus had to rebuke Peter for setting his mind on what mankind would think was loving. But Jesus was trying to save the whole world, and he had to go through that suffering. Now, that suffering that he went through, the disciples, even if they remembered what Jesus said and fully understood it, it would still be a hard time. I mean, you think about what went down. I mean, one of the 12, one of the closest, betrayed Jesus, betrayed him with a kiss. Hail, Rabbi, he said to him as he proceeded to kiss him and betray him and hand him over. Then you've got Peter saying, I will never deny you, I will go to the death for you. One of the closest 3 denies him 3 times to different people. The Pharisees, because of envy, handed him over, and Pilate knew that it was because of envy that they handed him over, but in his weakness, he just submitted to the crowds. As the politician of his day, whatever the crowds wanted, I clean my hands, it's whatever the crowds want, handed him over, even though he knew he did nothing wrong, the injustice of that. The chief priests, the Pharisees, they brought in false witnesses to lie about what Jesus was doing. I mean, if we were alive in that day, this is so unjust. This can't be God's plan. This can't be God's plan for this all to happen. Surely. And then you've got them whipping him, them mocking him, them crucifying him, screwing the crown of thorns on his head. And then some of the final words that Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, as you were watching that as a disciple, it could be pretty hard to see, oh yeah, God's at work. God's saving the whole world. God is redeeming mankind. God is defeating death, cleansing the world from sin if they'll receive him. It can be pretty hard in moments of great evil to see that God is at work. But I want to encourage us today on Good Friday that God is not the author of evil. God is not the author of sickness. God works in a broken world and will bring good out of everything that is evil that he didn't cause. He causes all things to work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purposes. So if you're someone that follows Jesus today, you can be reassured everything happening in your life, whether it's an affliction or a challenge that God may have led you in, like the Spirit led Jesus into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. That was the Spirit of God leading Jesus into an intense time of suffering and challenge and testing. God leads us into those seasons. But that's not sinful to lead us into a season of challenge. I believe God doesn't cause us to be sick. He's not trying to teach us a lesson through that, because everyone that came to Jesus, he healed them of those sicknesses. And in the kingdom, we see there's no sickness there. There's going to be no death. He defeats death and sickness at the cross. So we can contend against those, knowing that God is not the author of that, but knowing that regardless of the outcome, he will work good through that. That the greatest evil that has ever transpired, the crucifixion, the murder of God himself, the betrayal, the lying, the envy, the insecurity, the cheating, all of those things, those were not of God. But God used the greatest evil that has ever transpired on the earth, on Good Friday. He used that. He used what the enemy thought he was winning. The enemy thought, I'm stealing, I'm killing, I'm destroying, and I'm victorious. And then we know what happens in a few days. God turned around the greatest evil that he didn't instigate and brought about the greatest miracle that mankind has ever seen in all of history. So my encouragement today is you may be going through different challenges. Some of those maybe God has led you into challenges. Like Jesus got led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He didn't eat for 40 days. That sounds pretty challenging. Maybe God's led you into a season of challenge. But there's other times when you may be going through challenges and it's not God's doing, but God's with you in it to bring good out of it, to help you overcome it, to take heart. In this world you will have trouble. In this world you will have tribulation. But take heart. I have overcome the world. One thing that Jesus said in the Last Supper, knowing what was coming, knowing that they were all going to ditch him like sheep, they were going to scatter, knowing that every single one was going to have to go through this challenge of seeing him tortured and wrongly accused and betrayed and die. He said to them the night before, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Do not let your heart be troubled, nor let it be fearful. If Jesus can say that to his disciples as they were about to go through the greatest evil that mankind has ever seen, the greatest challenge, and he can say to them, don't let your heart be troubled, nor let it be fearful. I'm encouraged that whatever challenge I may be going through, that Jesus is saying to me, hey Jordan, I've given you peace. Not peace based on your circumstances, not peace based on everything in your job being great, your marriage being great, your health being great, not peace based on the things of this world, not based on external things. Peace, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives do I give to you. And because of that, do not let your heart be troubled. You actually have the power in my grace, holding on to my peace, to not let your heart be troubled, nor let it be fearful. But the key to actually living in that truth of not letting your heart be troubled and not letting it be fearful is we need to remember. If we understand what God is doing in a season of suffering and what He's not doing, it provides us with great peace. Jesus told the disciples, I'm going to have to go through this, I'm going to suffer, I'm going to die, but I'm going to rise again 3 days later. If they could remember that and hold on to that, they would have had far more strength, peace, ability to withstand the trial that was coming. They just needed to remember. The Old Testament is filled with the Israelites forgetting. Remember, write it on your doorposts. I'll give you some different weird feasts, and you'll go into tents once a year, and just remember. We're going to go into a time of communion soon, because Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me. There are more challenges I believe we're all going to face in this life. But the way we get through those, the way we follow Jesus, the way we be Jesus-centered in this time is to remember. Remember. For every season of challenge and suffering, I believe He has spoken to us things through His written word, or maybe directly in time of prayer or worship or whatever, or maybe through a friend He's spoken through. For every season of challenge and suffering, I believe He has already revealed to us what He is going to do through that season. And if we can just remember, we will be able to tap into that peace. We will not have to let our heart be troubled when great evil is happening all around us. Evil we don't understand, evil we don't fully comprehend, evil that just looks so dark. And how could God possibly be at work in this moment, like those disciples would have felt as they saw the crucifixion and the torture of Jesus? So my encouragement today, as we go into this final song and as we take communion, is my exhortation is to dig into the words of Jesus and to the Scriptures, because you don't know what challenges are going to come. And I believe a lot more challenges are coming in the world. And I believe the darkest days are ahead, but also the most glorious days at the same time. Just like in the book of Acts, far more glorious. The disciples saw many miracles and the church multiplied, but also, all of them but one were martyred. It was a time of great glory, but a time of great challenge. And the way we get through that, the way we navigate that, is we get close to God. What He's already spoken to us, we remember, but sometimes we have to read the words first so we can actually remember them. So I encourage us to get into the Scriptures, get into prayer, to hear His voice, and let's do that in community. So we're going to have communion now, as Adam leads us in a song. If you didn't pick up a communion cup on the way in, the table is literally just where Kathy is, right there. So if you want to grab a communion cup, it's on right there, so you're welcome to do that now. Adam's just going to play, and we're going to take communion as he plays, and then feel free to join into the worship once you've taken communion. But as we take the bread, which is a thin little wafer, you have to peel off the thin plastic at the top first, and then you take the cup, which is the next plastic layer. Let's do this in remembrance of Him. Let's do this. Jesus said, do this. Let's remember that He said that. And let's do this in remembrance of Him, remembering that even in the darkest times, even when we go through great evil or great challenge or great suffering, that He is causing all things to work together for good. We don't know how long the darkness will last. We don't know if it will be 3 days. We don't know if it will be 3 months. We don't know if it will be 3 years. But what we do know, if we remember Jesus, is that He is victorious. He has defeated death. He is King. And good things are ahead for us as believers. So I invite you to peel off the top layer and take the bread as you feel led. It represents His body. And take the blood, the juice, His blood as you feel led. And let's finish with this song.